Welcome everyone to the Apogee Up Close webcast. This is a webcast that we're running twice a month, and the topics vary based on popular demand, usually covering aspects of Apogee API technology, as well as business aspects of running an API program. You can sign up for the webinar multiple times, and it gives an opportunity to ask questions live of the presenters, as you can do today. Hello everyone, I'm Alicia. I'm a program delivery consultant with Apogee, which is part of Google Cloud Platform, where I get to work with some of the world's biggest brands and help them leverage APIs to create business impact. I'm delighted to be joined today by Erin News-Chong, who is the Director of Core Digital Products and Innovation at Walgreens. And Erin's been leading digital product teams for over a decade, and we'll talk a bit about how APIs have been a business enabler at Walgreens. So today we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what it means to build API products, and Erin will talk a little bit about Walgreens' ability to use APIs to extend their assets out to developer ecosystems, and then we'll have time for your questions. So what do we mean when we talk about APIs as products? And how can productizing APIs provide opportunities for business? I have a simple example from the insurance business that I find product professionals can often relate to. So I was talking to a director in the IT business for a large multinational insurance company, and he was saying he sometimes struggles to articulate to business executives the value of APIs and how they should think about APIs. And so I gave him this example. I said, as it turns out, I had recently gone looking for drone insurance. I noticed that his company sold drone insurance. It was $800 to buy a policy for $1 million coverage that lasted a year. I did say that at that price point, it did seem to me that it priced itself out of the hands of most consumer shoppers, and indeed the more than 500,000 Americans that bought consumer drones in 2017. And then I showed him an application I'd found on my phone. When you launch the app, it draws a map, it drops a pin where you are, puts a circle around that, and says if you want to fly your drone out to a quarter of a mile, up to 1,000 feet for the next hour, for $1 million coverage, it's $25 click to buy. And I explained to him that the business he's in are experts at assessing and underwriting risk. In this case, the risk of an accident from a drone. And were they to productize their ability to the API, then they would be able to power this application and indeed dozens of others like it, rather than only going to market through perhaps high commission agent networks or direct to consumers over the phone. They could be powering dozens of apps, and indeed we're seeing the insurance industry moving towards this niche or micro insurance type business model where the consumer is looking for insurance more in the moment. And indeed, if they could productize to the API, then they could go straight to the drone manufacturers and say, look, why don't we just build insurance into the product? So when you go to fly your drone, it'll prompt you at some point before you get airborne saying, hey, do you want insurance for this flight? And you can just click yes. And the great thing about that too, for the insurance company that today really only gets data around what's happening in, with drone pilots when they buy the insurance or when they make a claim. Whereas if they were productizing to the API, then they would have visibility into how often people are flying, how long they're flying for, where they're flying, and all that information could go back into their data they collect and enrich their ability to assess risk around drone accidents. So that certainly makes sense, I think, for a lot of product professionals I speak to. But of course, there's a bunch of different things which we might talk about when we talk about productizing an API. We find it helpful to focus on these three items: outside in, speed to market, and iterative delivery. Each of these we can break down into further supporting ideas, some of which I'll talk about now, but also much of which is covered in our complete guide to API products ebook, which you'll find the link to at the end of the presentation. So let's look a little more closely at inside out. So we've seen a repeated pattern of success with our customers driven by how they think about the problem, which comes with a shift in thinking. Traditional IT teams that are close to their close to their systems, their back-end applications. They understand natively the limitations and complexity of those systems. And when they build APIs, the risk is they take those complexities and those limitations and they make them manifest in the APIs that they then build. We would call this like an inside-out approach or an exposure model. But increasingly we see the opportunity for businesses is to bring their unique capabilities to bear in digital experiences for customers, such as mobile applications, web pages, smartwatches, or digital assistants such as Google Home. And to build those services, to build those solutions require app developers to take the capabilities of an organization and then express that in one of those great user experiences. And of course, users, customers, consumers are used to seeing those things get produced and updated at an increasingly accelerated rate. And so the demand on the app developer to take the capabilities of an enterprise and express those in wonderful user experiences is really quite high. It's essential for organizations to be successful ultimately to those expectations or that opportunity that comes from those users is all about enabling that app developer to meet that need as quickly as possible, as easily as possible. And so we talk about that as an outside-in approach. In other words, what it means is that the API team that are building the APIs are responding to the need that the app developer has to create apps and services in response to new opportunities and threats, and making sure the API is designed in such a way that it's easy for the app developer to see how it's going to help them solve the problem they need. And ultimately, being able to do that, being able to make sure the API is intuitively just the thing that the app developer needs to solve the problem they have, speeds the adoption from the app developer of that capability, lets them respond quickly to those opportunities, and ultimately benefiting business. So packaging up an API as a product means considering outside-in design and, as I said, making it really easy for those consuming app developers to find and use them, and then helping them with things like great documentation that makes it clear what the API does and how it's to be used. There's a bunch of other things which are also important in terms of creating a great API product. But I think it's worth maybe describing for a moment what a good API product experience would look like. And I'm going to give you a model for that. So imagine it's your niece's birthday. She's turning 8 and she says she wants a Lego castle for her birthday. So you go down to the Lego store and you walk in and you can see there's a mural in the background of the store of a dragon. You think the fantasy stuff might be over there. When you walk over, sure enough, you can see there's boxes on the shelf that have pictures on them. Here's a picture of a box with a castle in the picture, and that looks like the kind of thing that she would like. In fact, there's a glass display cabinet right there in front of you that shows one that's been put together. It's like a reference implementation. You can see how all the complex bits and pieces inside that box will go together in just the way that makes the thing that is what you need to give to your niece to sort of to meet that requirement that you have. In fact, if you look at the box on there, it has things like who it's for, ages, for example. It has pictures of other things you can make. You can use the parts of the box, the bits inside the box to make, which is like alternative use cases. So you grab the box, walk over to the register, pay. You're out within a few minutes, and now you have something that confidently is going to satisfy your niece and delight her in terms of what she wants for her birthday. So that's a consumption model where the stuff in the box, the complexity of Lego, is all put together in a way that makes it really easy for you to just walk in, find the thing you need, and walk out super quick without having to think about it too much. But the exposure model, if we took that approach, if I think about some of the teams we've worked with in the past that are very close to their legacy processes, their complex and constrained back-end systems, the experience they would create might look something different. In their world, you'd walk to the Lego store. You can't quite go in straight away though, because you need to have an NDA and a contract in place first. Once you've got those, then you can go inside the Lego store. And when you walk inside, all the complexity is here on display, right? So there's rows and rows and rows of buckets of different types of Lego, and it's up to you to figure out which bits you need to make the thing that you need to make the castle. So you really have no choice but to go and find someone and say, look, I want to make a castle, and they say, yeah, that's fine, maybe just start with 1,000 of the grey bricks, get another 200 of those brown bricks, and then come back and I'll give you the rest of the list. It takes you half an hour to assemble all these bits and pieces in a bag. You walk out with this big bag of all these bits of Lego, still not really confident you have exactly what you need to go together to make the castle for your niece. And so you can see in that environment, there's the uncertainty and also the complexity that slows down adoption and ultimately, potentially gets in the way of you being able to achieve the thing that you achieved. So that inside-out approach, we see is what passes the complexity onto the app developer and then ends up slowing down adoption. So certainly it's really important when you put together your API product teams that you have someone that's close to the business need that's part of that team. The product owner in your Scrum team building APIs should be someone that's very close to the specific business need so they can make sure they bring that API, that outside-in perspective to the API design. And also it's valuable to iterate quickly as you go through those enumerations of the API design, testing with the appropriate audience, so you can very, very quickly get to the ideal expression of the capability in the way the app developer needs it, which is the same thing you do for any kind of product that you would build. So one organization that's been very good at doing this with great business result is Walgreens. And we have Erin here today to tell us a little bit about it.
Thanks, Alicia. So as you're probably aware, Walgreens is a very large and very diverse organization, and we have a lot of different businesses operating within the overall corporation. So my team, our core digital products team, our mission is to create and scale and operate the digital products that aren't aligned to any one specific business, but designed to optimize the overall value to the corporation and to support the needs of all the different types of customers that Walgreens has as a company. And one very, very important part of my team is our external API program, which is what I'm excited to talk to you more about today. I've been in my current role for just a few months now, but I've been with Walgreens for almost 7 years. So I was there in 2012 when we launched our very first API program. And at the time, I was leading product for the Walgreens photo business. And when I think back to that time, there were 3 key things that were happening within Walgreens e-commerce that I think played a huge role in the initial success and then later growth of our API program. First, we had a very strong digital and mobile strategy as a foundation. Second, we had the right mindset to embrace disruption. And third, we were developing a product management discipline within our e-commerce organization. So first, the strategy. So we had an amazing strategy set up for us with embarking on our API program journey. We started out, we were really a leader and first to market with a lot of really important mobile solutions like refill by scan and photo printing from your camera roll. And we did this by kind of just reimagining the best parts of a Walgreens store and how they looked through a mobile lens. And that was great. And we had some great mobile apps, but more importantly than just having the great apps was the connection that we had into our stores. So we actually had this seamless connection into our digital stores and a truly omni-channel experience for our customers, for their digital solutions to have a meaningful endpoint in our stores. And so this was obviously very, very powerful for us as a company. And we had some very insightful leadership, very talented leadership in e-commerce that realized the power of that didn't have to be limited by what we could build within our own assets, but we could actually take those key store services and extend them out to a broader ecosystem and really take advantage of all of the sort of enthusiasm and momentum that was happening in creating really great innovative digital services and applications. Second, we had a business, Photo, that was going through a period of huge transformation and disruption with the very rapid shift of user behavior to smartphone photography, app usage, and reliance on social media sharing. And across this industry, the photo printing business specifically, which is very capital investment heavy, was in decline, and Walgreens Photo was no exception to this. And I get a ton of credit to the head of our photo business who really understood and appreciated that change is an opportunity.
Right.
And he was very eager to embrace and even actually drive disruption in his own industry. So he was very open-minded to innovative ways to build that business and very willing to take smart risks in order to drive that growth that he was seeking. And right now, honestly, I think almost everything is being disrupted in a similar way.
That's
so
right.
it would be hard for me to think of a business today that shouldn't have this kind of mindset. Finally, very importantly, we were in the process of building and maturing the product management discipline and product thinking within our digital organization. So every new thing that we did, we looked at through the lens of how do we manage this in a product way. Now, I've been a product person for many years, and I'm accustomed to seeking opportunities and looking for them at the intersection of the things that add value to the business and the things that add value for the customers. And what's most interesting to me about managing APIs as products is that you actually layer on a third dimension, which is the things that add value for the developer.
Right.
In fact, the value that you unlock for the customer or end user becomes indirect, in that while you're defining the opportunity for customer value and enabling and unlocking that opportunity for customer value, it's actually the developer who's responsible for optimizing that customer experience and the
Right.
user experience for that capability. And so because of that, product design for us becomes driven primarily by the needs of the developer community. And this is the outside-in approach that you were
Of
talking
course.
about earlier.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So the example that you see here, when we talk about the origin of our very first API, our photo printing API, we thought about our problem statement. How do we re-engage smartphone users with photo printing? And our business goal of increasing photo print revenue and our customers' goal of having fun with photos and apps and social media and having a really frictionless way for them to create a physical output of that without having to go do a separate thing. And because of this, we realize that we're reliant on the owners and developers of these fun apps and these experiences that people were using to help us reach those customers.
Right.
And we also knew that we had something really valuable that we could offer them. And so we worked on trying to put together a really easy to use API packaged up with our Walgreens brand and an opportunity for these developers to get a revenue share from the partnership and interaction that they had with us. So this formula, the right strategy, the right mindset, the product management approach worked really well for us because we've created this great product. We've created it with the outcome in mind. We've made it really easy to use with a great feature set, with these revenue and marketing opportunities. We had a lot of great interest from the developer community, really from the very beginning, which was really exciting. And we've built this program up so that as of today, we've actually had over 200 partners have integrated with our photo printing API. And the benefit for Walgreens has been many things. First and foremost, the direct revenue that's been generated directly to Walgreens by these transactions that come through our API program is really significant, and
Right.
it's meaningful enough to have really, we could say it played a role in getting photo back into being a growth business, which is really
Right.
exciting.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we've discovered that this developer community is, doing what they do best and being creative and finding creative ways to attract customers which then ultimately find their way to us at Walgreens.
Right.
And the way that they do that is, as we've built these APIs, we've done it in a way that, again, we're unlocking and enabling these core capabilities, but we're also making it flexible enough that they can choose which bits and pieces of that are right for them in the experience that they want to create.
Right.
And I think this flexibility and just this environment has been really wonderful. And I think for this industry as a whole, it's become more innovative. And I think, we've been able to directly apply some of that innovation that's happened to within our own assets as well.
That's
over
great.
time. So honestly, and remember that back then I was not a mobile person or an API person. I was the head of product for photo.
Right, of
And I sat within the photo business team, and it was really, really hard for me coming into this partnership with our API team at the time, to kind of give up control of what I viewed as my customers, to a third party to really take over and to drive an important part of that customer journey.
Right.
But at the same time, it was also actually really liberating for me because, those experiences didn't have the same constraints that I was used to dealing with. Brand constraints, technology capability constraints, and so it actually became really fun for me to see, what was possible that we weren't able to pursue ourselves.
Right.
And, at the end of the day, the great part is that even though we're sort of giving up this slice of the customer journey, this experience that the customer has ends after coming within our door. So they come to a Walgreens store and they walk in and they do get a part of the Walgreens experience and the Walgreens customer journey, to round out the experience. So over the past 5 years, we've continued to build out our portfolio of API products, and we've identified other opportunities to extend these core capabilities, and particularly at times of transition or disruption in those spaces, in a way that's enticing to our developer community. So today we have this whole portfolio of API products that we manage. After photo, we moved on to pharmacy with our refill and transfer API, where, obviously anything to do with pharmacy and Walgreens, the scale and the reach that we have is so great that it's a really appealing partnership. And it's, a really critical part of healthcare and what people are looking to do, with their basic health today. Then we move beyond basic refill capabilities into other aspects of health and wellness. So we've created an API that actually grants Walgreens Rewards program points for completing activities that are tracked versus fitness tracking devices.
Right.
And finally, most recently, we've moved on to thinking a lot about shopping and couponing capabilities. And just to kind of reinforce the mindset component of all of this, retail, the way that customers research, shop, and deal seek is shifting a lot right now. So customers are not necessarily going to Walgreens.com to start their shopping.
Right.
And we need to be really savvy about being present in the places that our customers are going first. So we have a digital offers API, which can present personalized offers and allow customers to clip coupons to their loyalty account and automatically redeem at checkout. And we also recently launched an add to cart API, so we can actually put a product directly into a Walgreens.com cart by clicking on a product details from anywhere that product appears in a customer's shop and search experience.
Yeah, that's really valuable. And that's a good example of that sort of outside-in design.
API products are managed like any other product within our digital portfolio, and there are a few keys to success for what that looks like for Walgreens. First of all, we have a product roadmap for APIs, and we present that product roadmap at our quarterly digital roadmap review, which encompasses our entire digital product portfolio, and the audience for that is our product team, our partners in technology, business teams, marketing, and other key stakeholders. So there's great visibility into what we're doing and a great source of opportunity and partnerships with other teams. Second, we have a fantastic developer evangelist, and he actually sits right within the product team.
Right.
So the partnership with the product managers is very strong, and we're able to have the product way of thinking ingrained in the way that we connect with our developer community, as well as having the developer needs fully integrated and ingrained into the way we think about designing our products.
Okay.
Next, we have great tools to engage with the developer community and manage our API program. We have our developer portal, which is the initial entry point into accessing our APIs. We, of course, have Apogee, which allows us to be a great partner to our developer community, even while managing our APIs at the product level and managing this across 300 partners with a very, very small team. We're just able to be so efficient and responsive to those developers, which really helps to keep them engaged and motivated with the program.
Right.
We also have really great central communication tools. We typically use Basecamp, which helps anyone to be able to stay in the loop as we sort of transition between the different types of tasks that happen when we're setting up a new partner or new capability within our API program. Soon, we're also going to be launching a new informational page that's designed to help developers communicate the value of the program in a value-centric way to non-technical senior stakeholders that they may have within their own organization. And last, but definitely not least, we put a big focus, as you would with any type of product, on defining what success looks like for that product, for that API.
Right.
And we're always tracking and reporting on our performance against those metrics.
Right.
So that's what managing APIs as products looks like for us. And I think the important thing is to best align your product management approach to the needs of your own organization. So I'm looking forward to taking some questions today. And if you have any follow-ups or want to connect with us, you can contact us through our developer portal, developer.walgreens.com.
Thank you so much, Erin. And I got to say, I really enjoy having these sorts of conversations because, you know, we're always out there talking to customers. We learn a lot from the time we spend with you know, teams like Erin's team, you know, who have sort of had that lived experience in, you know, what works and doesn't work. And the wonderful opportunity I have is to learn from all those different businesses, and we try to bring the best of all that knowledge together. And so one example of that is, you know, the complete guide to API products. You know, we have an ebook that brings together, you know, the collection of insight that we've been able to gather over the years around how to think about APIs as, you know, key business enablers, and how to sort of take that forward from a technology as well as from a business or product perspective. So you can get that API product mindset ebook is available on the link on the screen. And we also have a partner microsite around that content too that includes, you know, further information such as, you know, strategies, testimonials, and success stories such as the one that Erin shared today. So that's it for our presentation. We'd love to now hear any questions that you might have for us.
The first question here, I think it's one for you, Erin. Let me just read this out. How do you manage the bureaucracy within a large organization like Walgreens when looking to build new API products and expose additional services?
Yeah, so that's definitely a big factor for us. I would say to me, the key here is always about relationships. So I think that's one thing that product managers are trained to do really, really well is to build relationships across very different parts of the organization and to kind of learn how to speak a lot of different languages, so to speak. So whether it's talking to the business teams, excuse me, or security teams, or other IT teams, to kind of be able to communicate to those teams not only what we're trying to do, but why we're doing it, and especially to be able to kind of lead with that value proposition, what the benefit is to the organization by unlocking this service or capability that we're trying to put out there. And I'd say beyond that, also just having really great subject matter expertise and credibility within the team kind of sets us up for success to be empowered to go out and lead and build our program. And we make sure that we have those experts on our team involved in every step of the process as we're designing, building, and exposing our new APIs. So we kind of build up that trust with those partner teams, which helps us to smooth out the path forward through the processes and approvals and all those pieces that we need to navigate.
Excellent. It looks like the next question, Erin, maybe applies mostly to Walgreens' experience as well. To what degree has your accomplishment helped other product people in the organization recognize and understand the opportunity of productizing to the API?
Yeah, so we've definitely had some big breakthroughs with this recently. I mentioned earlier in the talk that our current focus is really in the retail and shopping space right now. And our digital product team for retail has kind of become a very important partner and collaborator with us for our API program. So now they're actually coming to us and reaching out to us when they initiate a new project for retail that they actually are thinking on their own could be relevant to expose beyond our own website. So that's great. And it's not just our other product teams, but actually we have partners on other teams as well that are starting to reach out to us more and more. So IT teams that might not have originally thought about their services benefiting from a product approach or kind of being extended outside. Marketing teams that are starting to really understand how powerful a tool these products can be for unique ways of going after customer acquisition. So I think right now we're seeing just a huge swell of people who are appreciating the value and they're reaching out to us. You know, in the lifetime of this program, we saw sort of a big surge in interest and attention when we first launched. We saw another kind of big surge in interest and attention when we first expanded the program beyond photo. And I kind of feel like we're in another one of those periods of time right now, which is really exciting for us.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so there's another great question here. How do you evolve from a project mindset to a product mindset? I might talk just about that for a moment and then be keen to see what your thoughts on that are from your experience in Walgreens. Erin, so I think there's part of this question is about the mindset, right? And I think maybe I'll just give three pieces I think are important to making this transition. So I think one piece is definitely about the leadership, right? So having sponsorship within the organization that allows you to organize around opportunity from a product perspective, and that means recognizing that there's going to be a continuation of effort through multiple iterations of different projects in order to continue to move towards, execution against an ideal business goal and refine success. So I think that sponsorship is the first part. I think the second part then is just in terms of bringing together the right people, within a team for that. And so a part of that is making sure that as I said earlier, when I was talking about the combination of API development teams, having someone that's close to the business, that's part of the team developing an API. So your product owner in your Scrum team is ideally, someone that's actually, hands-on, close to the actual business problem being solved. And that leads kind of to the third point too, which is about continuing to develop talent and capability. So a key aspect here of value is typically with project teams, you move people on and off these bits of work. And when you move people away, you spend some time developing capability, then kind of gets lost unless it's specifically, managed and directed after the project ends. You lose the capability that you've just been incubating. And so I think one of those key parts of the mindset is making sure that you build API product teams, Scrum teams that can come together to build this, that can remain attached and can capitalize on the experience that they've developed. And that also goes for that product owner person, someone that, you can imagine you've got people in your product organization that might not be experts on APIs, but by virtue of getting involved in this team and in this part of the business and then executing on a couple of iterations, they're going to develop a lot of understanding that's going to continue to pay benefits over time. Erin, I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think you stated it really well. I think the only thing that I would add is, again, kind of getting back to that value proposition perspective is being able to convey the value of the continuity that you get beyond just the launch of a project. When you're in a project mindset, there's a checkbox at the end that you've completed it, and then everyone, as you referenced, moves on to that next project. But when you have the ownership of the product, you have that continuity forward, and that's actually truthfully the most important part of success is how you evolve that after that initial launch. And that ownership mindset is really important. I think just kind of conveying to the key stakeholders that value proposition from the beginning. And I think beyond that too, obviously in the agile mindset, the ability to sort of pivot as you go and as you learn really is another selling point that you can kind of give to your leadership to buy into this product mindset.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Realized value is so important. So another great question here, with API as a product, do you optimize API for product aggregation, syndication, or direct purchase, or all of them based on customer buying journey? In other words, how do you prioritize with API products? I might talk about that just for a moment, Erin, and then see what you think too. I think from our perspective, once again, actually, I think it relates a lot to what you were just saying a moment ago about value. I think that prioritization should definitely come from the confluence of business strategy and value opportunity. And I think, recognizing that at some point, within your organization, within your pipeline, there's a constraint on resources, particularly as you incubate this capability and grow over time to sort of meet demand. Obviously you have to have a rationalization of, what you can tackle. And I think, in that respect, in terms of prioritization, insofar as you have to prioritize resources against the backlog, I think it has to come from the confluence, as I said, of strategic alignment and business value. Erin, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's definitely the same thing for us, is that there's no one right answer, right? It depends on sort of where you're at in the maturity. It's, again, kind of what I mentioned, identifying where you have disruption or transformation going on, and then, modeling out around what the right value proposition is for that particular feature. And I think, over time that definitely changes. And I think it's just really being very attuned to where the biggest opportunity for overall value is at that time.
Awesome. So there's a question here which I think relates to one that's been asked, and maybe we can just cover that quickly. Can great API products still be built while the organization is being project focused? Look, I think it's possible. As I said, I think the risk is that you develop capability that you might then spread to the winds. If that's intentional in terms of incubating capability and then federating that out, I think that's okay. But typically project focus means that people come together, solve a problem, go away, and any kind of momentum is lost. And particularly given that part of this journey, I think, is about developing that mindset more broadly across the organization, particularly within, sort of product and marketing people, then I think there's a risk that gets massively diluted.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely harder, but it's certainly not impossible. And I think if you're very strong in your own approach from a product way of thinking, that we certainly, again, Walgreens is a very big company, and not all aspects of Walgreens as an organization are in a product mindset still to this day. And so with some of these things, we're still interacting with groups that operate in a project way, and we just really hope that showing the example of the benefits is contagious, and it has been. We've seen that spread more throughout the org.
So another great question here, what is the best way to communicate with the developer community to sell your API products to them? I might give it just a 50,000-foot answer on that, and then once again, Erin, would love your thoughts. I think my only comment on this will be, it's so important to think about your go-to-market on API products. And I think this is a trap that many, IT teams fall into, is they kind of build, the API, they build the interface, put it, maybe up on DevPortal or an API catalog, and that's about as far as they think through the problem. But of course, I think it's so important to think from that developer perspective, think about who that audience is, how do you reach them. All this is well understood activities for any kind of product professional. And I think you need to bring that thinking into those API products.
Yeah, for us specifically, we rely on a really very, very knowledgeable developer evangelist on our team who is out there every day interacting with the developer community and understanding what they need. And again, as I mentioned, he sits right within the product team. So we have that strong collaboration. So we're getting that message from the developer community loud and clear. And when, that becomes reciprocated. So they're then very receptive. When we have ideas that we want to bring to them, we're speaking their language and we understand what types of things add value.
Excellent. Actually, Erin, there's a great question here, which I guess sort of talks, for my mind, about that outside-in perspective. So for Erin, do you start building APIs by working first with customers or with options and decisions from within the organization?
Yeah, so I mean, it's both, right? And you have to, and I think this goes back to what I mentioned, sort of the foundation of the product mindset is identifying opportunities that are at the intersection of business value and customer value. So, we're always talking to our business stakeholders, business owners, other people within the company to understand what their key strategic goals, independently of any given channel or program of how we would achieve that, but what are their goals? where are they trying to fill gaps in the business? Where are they trying to grow and evolve? And then at the same time, we're within our digital product management organization. So we're very, very attuned to our digital customers and what their needs and desires are. And so we're always very aware of, what are the top things that our customers want to be able to do that can't, and sort of how do we kind of then take those two lists of things and butt them up against each other and identify where there's just really great alignment between what's going to drive the business and what's going to make those customers happy. And then, again, once we understand what things the customer wants that can unlock that business value, is identifying how do we sort of frame that in a way that we can harness not only our own capabilities and platforms internally, but sort of put that out there to see what the developer community can come up with to help solve that same problem.
Right.
Because they always see that in a different way than we do from the inside.
Yeah, and there's great sort of commentary on this from experts and economists around platform businesses. Sort of around how do you develop external to your organization innovation, say, for example, in a developer community, and then what's the right time to sort of harvest some of that and bring that back in, to the platform as well. So I think there's some great, reading that's relevant on that as well. Another question here for you, Erin. What were the challenges of developing your roadmap, given that you're servicing developers, which are a step away from customers? Has that had implications, I guess, on your internal product roadmap?
It does and it doesn't. So I think it just really affects the way that we manage that particular roadmap. And, I know it's different from organization to organization, but within Walgreens, we're already managing our digital portfolio in a portfolio approach. And so while we'll have overarching goals for our digital organization in terms of what we're trying to drive, our key success metrics and so forth, sort of each individual area within our digital product team has their own strategic goals as well. And so we definitely are always looking to say, how can this program roll up to the goals that we have for our digital organization and even beyond that to the broader company. But when it comes to, okay, we've determined that this is an important fit within our portfolio, how do we spend the resources that we've been allocated? We are really able to look at specifically optimizing how to drive that value with the API program. And so it's kind of balancing those two things. It's at the higher level, defining, what the strategic goals are, but then our work throughout the year, we really have the autonomy and independence to kind of say, what are we going after first? And those things definitely are driven by the developer community, and again, their appetite and their availability to partner with us on certain things throughout the execution of the roadmap.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. And I'm wondering then if that sort of relates then to this next question. Given you have the roadmap, you've got a backlog of things you want to accomplish. The question here is, from your experience at Walgreens, how quickly does it typically take to go from concept to production?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's not an easy answer. It really varies widely depending on the complexity of the service that we're trying to expose, right? So I would say, in the best case scenario, we can move very, very quickly because we identify an opportunity. Again, we have this great dedicated team that are all SMEs and the great partnership between our developer community connection and our internal teams and products. And so, we are very, very agile, very fast, more so than a lot of parts of the organization. So, we can get this whole thing stood up in a matter of a couple of months. Others are going to take longer because it requires maybe more of that sort of overcoming bureaucracy that we talked about earlier, and more support maybe from partner teams. And again, they could be some partner teams in the organization that are still in a project mindset and not a product mindset. So, for us, again, I know everyone's situation is different, but in a big company like ours, it varies widely depending on those factors.
So another question here for you, Erin, I think, with the benefit of experience, if you could go back to the start of your Walgreens API program, is there anything that you would do differently?
Oh, that's a great question. I know everyone says they'd always love to go back and do it all over. I think for us, I'd actually say not a lot of things. You know, I talked about it in our story. We were really fortunate that when we started this program, the conditions were really right. So we had a good strategy, we had the right mindset, we had the right approach. So kind of those things I wouldn't change. And I guess I would just say anyone who is trying to start this from scratch now or is in the early stages now of trying to start a program like this, to kind of find ways to replicate those kind of conditions that were the right ones for success for us sort of within their own organization. So identifying the right type of opportunity based on its strategic value, having potentially a strong business partner, having that appetite and availability of the developer community to partner with, and sort of make sure that you're approaching it with the understanding that you are building a product or products. So fundamentally, no, but I think there's probably one thing that comes to mind that we would maybe do a little bit differently, and I think that's addressing the marketing component a little bit earlier on and having more collaboration with our digital marketing teams, because it can be very complex when you think about how, you know, when your goal is to grow this program, and traditionally with marketing, you know the tools that you have to grow a program, but in this case, the starting point of customer acquisition is with a brand that's not our brand. So it can be difficult to kind of balance how do we give the developers or, you know, our partners tools for marketing to grow these products that are, you know, beneficial for them and supportive to the program, which benefits us, but that don't conflict with our own marketing goals and priorities for our own digital assets. And honestly, that's still something we're still kind of figuring out. And I think, you know, we would have hopefully perfected that by now had we started that conversation a little bit earlier.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think in our experience as well, you know, talking to other customers, I think that, you know, that go-to-market aspect, particularly, you know, as you said, that it's your you know, engaging ultimately an audience group that's indirect and you know, not with your brand. I think that is difficult. And I see that has implications too for, you know, how you build advocacy and awareness within the organization around the program, given, you know, that your organization is one that has such strong brand recognition in the marketplace. And I'm sure many people in the organization, of course, quite rightly, quite proud of that brand. And then how do you make sure that you get some, you know, some airtime for the idea of, you know, well, he is a part of the business where the Walgreens brand isn't necessarily the front and center. However, it is still fundamental to our core business. So there's a few questions here about different architecture elements, and maybe a way to sort of frame them to you is, you know, given that there's, you know, legacy design patterns, you know, such as building monolith applications, you know, that potentially, you know, either have existed in the past in the organization or maybe even continue to exist in parts of the organization today. So, I mean, you know, you have technical debt, and maybe to some degree you sort of add into that in the organization. You know, how do you, as a leader of this group, how do you make sure you bring together the right kind of, you know, challenger thinking on architecture, you know, when it comes to elements like, you know, the solution design, or, you know, orchestration, security? How do you make sure that you bring the right, you know, the right perspective on that and balance against maybe any kind of legacy thinking?
Yeah, and again, I think it's about those trusting relationships. But, you know, I think from the beginning, it's we understand that the model that you use to actually build out an API program that can be extended to the outside world is actually a really great flexible way of building access to a service that we can consume internally. And so again, when we think back to the beginning of this program, you know, our goal was to take a company that had all these services that were traditional brick and mortar services and actually build them all through a digital lens, right? So the very same mindset we're sort of working on almost in parallel, you know, slightly behind with the API program, But in parallel to that, and the goals are very much the same. And again, I think when you start with that right way of thinking from the beginning with this specific element, when you start to butt up into barriers where other parts of the organization that we're relying on don't operate in that way, again, we sort of shine the light on what the benefit could be, not just to our third-party API program, which is one slice, but to our overall ecosystem internally that allows us to connect across different parts of the organization. And, you know, I think I've seen in the past couple of years more and more of a movement away from that sort of old monolithic way of thinking into a very, you know, services or you could say microservices-based model that's actually much more and more compatible with the way that we're trying to operate our program.
Yeah, that's right, which allows for so much more agility. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for those great questions. I think we're kind of out of time now for questions. There was some great stuff in there. I know we couldn't get to all the questions, so I do apologize for those who asked questions that we were unable to answer. So can I just, in terms of wrapping up, can I just remind everyone in terms of the resources that we spoke about today, you know, during this webcast. The Complete Guide to API Products ebook has a lot of great content curated from, you know, a number of time spent with a number of customers on, you know, what are the considerations you should bring into organizing internally around that API product mindset and deploying API products. There's a microsite around that with some additional stories and material and strategies. So those links are available here on the slide, but also in the resources section of the webinar. And then don't forget too that our next webinar on the 12th of July will be covering tackling disruption and cloud complexity through effective API management. So please make sure you join us again for that. And before then, on June 27th, we have a virtual API Jam, great opportunity to get hands-on with Apigee and help get you started with your platform. So thank you again, Erin, so much for participating and sharing the Walgreens story. It's been, there's so much insight, I think, available, and I'm sure we only just scratched the surface in the time we had together today.
Thanks for having me, Alicia, and thanks to everyone for the great questions.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining. You know, once again, it certainly is something which we hope is valuable to everyone on the call, and I hope you'll continue to join us in the webinar series in the future, and again on the 12th of July. Thanks for joining.